Max NG7M here, and if you found this video, you are probably a amateur radio operator interested in HF and rig control, and that's why I made this video. As you can see on screen here, we'll be talking about sharing one cat feed, and in the world of transceivers and radios, that CAT stands for Computer Aided Transceiver. And there seems to be a lot of confusion out there. A lot of guys want to automate their station, and sometimes it gets a little confusing when you want to share that one cat feed with your radio across multiple software applications, then at the same time across multiple hardware devices. So this is my approach to the problem, and I've been using this solution for a long time, and will be somewhat specific, well, very specific to a K3S. And I'm using some software called Win4K3 Suite, and that's what will be used to share the cat feed. And so the topics that I'll be discussing here, though, are pretty universal, so don't be scared away if you don't own a K3S. The Win4K3 Suite, there's also versions that exist for some ICOM radios and then also for Yaesu radio, so we'll talk about that a little bit too. This video really was inspired from questions. I was building an RF kit B26 RF2K Plus. It's an LDMOS QRO amplifier, and so I'm going to touch, at one point in the video, I'll talk a little bit more about interfacing that amplifier directly with a cat feed here too. And again, in the case of my setup, it'll be a K3S. And so, as always, I'll try to include some of the links and, you know, if there's other information discussed here in the description of the video down below. And if you like the video, give me the thumbs up, and please leave constructive comments, and I'll, you know, adjust the description and things like that. So again, don't be scared away if you have a different radio like an ICOM or a Yaesu or something like that. If you have a flex radio, it's a little bit different animal because it's using just typically, you know, you're integrated right on your LAN. But some of the concepts here may apply as far as sharing your cat feed, you know, effectively coming from your flex radio to other hardware devices. So I'm not a flex guy, so I don't have any experience with one of those transceivers. However, they're very, very good. All of the transceivers I've mentioned here are very good. So what the approach I'm going to take here is I've created a diagram that I want to talk through, and I don't want the diagram to scare you at all either. So let's move on to that portion of the video, and we'll get me out of the way like you see me do in all my videos. Maybe down here. And I'm using a free program out there called Draw.io, and this software, if I can get myself moved out of the way here a little bit, up here. This software allows you to create, you know, computer-oriented diagrams, and so I spent some time, and I laid out, you know, a rough layout of my shack. And again, if it looks too busy for some of you, don't get too overwhelmed by all the colors and everything going on in the video. I'll be able to click on, you know, here we're going to be focused on a physical K3S, and I can turn on a video of that. I've got a couple other webcams going here, so we can turn on. So you'll see my K3S over here with my fat fingers, and we'll be doing a few little demos here. So for now, I'm going to leave that turned off. Not that one right there. So in the diagram, as you can see, the white background here is in effect my physical shack here, and I have my K3S that I just showed you on the video, and along the bottom here you're seeing some of the hardware that I have integrated in the shack. So I've got a WinKey or USB. I've got as I mentioned earlier, the B26 RF2K Plus amplifier. I actually have an SPE2K FA, which I don't have shown here, but I may show that with some software here. And then I've got a couple of Step-IR SDA100 controllers. I have a DB18 on a LM470 crank-up tower. and then I have a big IR, which is a stepper vertical for 6 meters through 80 meters. I have the 80-meter coil on it, and so that's another box I've got in the shack here. I have a Palstar HF Auto. It's a legal limit tuner, quite the work of art, that actually uses stepper motors in it too to automate tuning. And then I have my rotor for my DB18 on top of the tower, of course. And then part of this solution will be focused on this over here on this side quite a bit during the discussion. This is an 8-port VSCOM FTDI chipset serial box. So it's a physical box that has 8 physical DB9 connectors on the front. And I'll show a video of that. It's kind of tucked back behind my monitor. In fact, maybe I could quickly show that here. I think I can turn that on. Let's take a peek at that real quick. Let's see. And it's right back in here. If you can see that, see the right there, you can see VSCOM Pro, and you got the blinking lights here, and you can see a bunch of DB9 hoods connected into those 8 serial ports for some devices that I use here in the shack. And again, don't be overwhelmed. You don't have to get crazy like this. I'm kind of an automation junkie, and I love to operate, and I love to automate everything. And so if you're looking at doing, a multi-single, or my shack is certainly not set up for a multi-2 yet, but I'm working on setting things up for an SO2R. But I like to operate, and so hence all the automation. So that is a picture of that 8-port serial box, which we'll be covering in a little bit of detail here. And I keep turning on off me. Maybe that's a sign. And there's the K3. And there we go. Okay. So back to the diagram here. Follow my cursor going around. That's the hardware in the shack we're, for the most part, going to be talking about. If you look inside this orange round rectangle box here, envision that is my PC. The physical PC, and then over here on the left I'm showing just a little block as part of the diagram here where connections will come in from USB ports. So obviously you can see the K3 coming up here to this kind of this pink looking box. You've got the WinKey coming up here, and you have, I'm really only showing 3 USB devices plugged into the computer here. So I've got the VSCOM 8-port serial box that's also plugged in there. So there's really 3 devices there. And so again, the orange area is the physical computer. For this blue box, this represents the Windows 10 operating system, and I'm obviously running 64-bit operating system here. And guys that are familiar with USB to serial devices, you'll have lots of experience opening up the device manager. So this box here will represent the COM ports that I have set up as listed in the device manager. And of course I could pull up the device manager here too, bring it over, and it'll just depend on how the discussion goes here. But the serial ports that I list in the yellow box here correlate to what is set up inside the device manager there. For example, the WinKey down here is assigned as COM10, and I show that up here, COM10. The Elecraft K3S, in my case, I'm using the USB port, and I have that set up as COM9. See this COM9 K3S there in green, so you can see that down here. And for the Elecraft guys, for the K3 or even the K3S, if you're using the backwards compatible DB9 serial port off the back of the K3S, or the only serial port off the back of a K3, this could easily just be COM9 hooked up to one of your USB to serial port cables, like something you would get from Elecraft, or when you could buy on Amazon, that is a USB to serial port adapter. So this is not specifically about a K3S. It works with a K3 or K3S. You just have to understand the K3S. You can hook up the cat control with a USB cable, which is nice. But you could also substitute in here a Yaesu or ICOM radio. The concepts are similar, right? You can have a serial connection either via USB port or a physical serial connection that's typically supplied via another USB to serial port adapter from your computer. So that's that yellow box there. And we'll talk about the COM port assignments here that are in purple. They correlate to the COM port assignments on that 8-port box down here that I just showed you. So we'll really be talking about COM ports 2 through 8, not necessarily all of them, and then COM 9 and COM 10 a little bit because of the Win gear. This box here, this blue box with the blue background, will be important. And don't let this confuse you either, because at first glance this can kind of overwhelm guys. And this section here will be talking about COM0 COM virtual serial ports that are null modem or null serial port pairs, and they're only visible by the Windows 10 operating system in this case. And the magic that we use here to create these COM port pairs, you can see that I have a COM30 to COM20, COM31 to COM21, COM32 to COM22. And those, again, you need to think of those literally as a virtual serial port null modem at the operating system level. And the side doesn't matter here. I could have put COM20 on the left side, COM21 on the left side, COM22 on the left side. It's just whatever goes in one side comes out the other side, opposite of transmit or receive. So if software is connecting to COM30, it's a null modem. What is transmitted on COM30 comes out as receive on COM20 and vice versa. So we'll touch on that a little bit more. This can be very confusing right here. And to set those up, before we get to the Win4K3 Suite discussion, and this is all described in detail with Win4K3 Suite or the Win4 ICOM Suite or the Win4 Yaesu Suite, where you set up these virtual null modem pairs using COM0 COM. And that application is a freebie, and if you Google it, you can also look at links that are available on the Win4K3 Suite site. And I am using version 3.0, the 64-bit signed version, and I just pulled up the website here. And so you'll find it on SourceForge. There is COM0 COM 3.0, the signed version, because I'm running 64-bit, which it typically requires signed drivers. You can get around that, but it's not worth it. Just use the signed version. And so you'll need to install that. That will have a graphical program called Setup G, and I'm just going to touch on that real quick. And this allows you to create those pairs. So here I have COM20 paired up with COM30, 21 with 31, 22 with 32. In my case, you can number them whatever you want. So we'll talk about that. Now, where the real magic here works, and by the way, there are other solutions. I realize that. So somebody that's watching this, if you think you've got a better solution or whatever, knock yourself out. This is my approach. This is what I found to be the most reliable. The Win4K3 Suite application, which controls the K3, also has functionality to share the Computer Aided Transceiver port, or the CAT port, off the K3. And so we'll be focused on that, and I'll actually show that running. But the features of Win4K3 Suite give you complete control over your transceiver, and I'm not going to get into those details. I'm primarily going to be focusing on the ability it gives you to create virtual CAT feeds that can be used by software and other hardware devices. And why I love Win4K3 Suite, and that's a shameless plug for the product, is that reason, really, and that reason alone. I mean, it has a PAN adapter capabilities and a bunch of other features, but the COM port sharing is rock solid, reliable in my experience. And it's been several years since I've been using it. Very happy with that. And so let's talk a little bit more about that now here in the diagram, and then we'll minimize the diagram, and then I'm going to actually show you the software. We'll show you Win4K3 Suite, and then we'll show all of these applications in the diagram running at the same time, and they all think they're connected directly to my K3. There is absolutely zero difference as far as that software and hardware is concerned, as far as the data that it can pull from the K3. The software has no clue whether it's connected to a virtual cat feed from my K3S or directly to the K3. So keep that in mind. So Win4K3 Suite is actually the only piece of software besides the COM0COM software that is required here to create these virtual cat interfaces that you'll use across your other software. And what you'll see is that's the main thing I start up when I boot up in my operating system. I'm getting ready to play radio and chase some DX or tinker around with FT8, you know, whatever, do a contest. I fire up Win4K3 Suite, and it, for lack of a better term, it physically connects to my K3 and gives a software control of all the menu options and everything else on the K3, which you'll see. And that's what I'm showing at the top of this gray box here that I've highlighted. You can see that it is set up to talk to COM9, which is in green here, okay? And that correlates to COM9 here that I talked about, which I've assigned from that physical connection coming from my K3S down here, right, that's plugged into the back of my computer. And I've assigned that COM port as COM9. And so the color coding here is important as I talk about that. So Win4K3 Suite is what is connected to my transceiver down here. It's receiving and managing that cat feed that will now be shared via the creation of virtual K3S feeds across software. So in this gray box, direct connection to the K3, K3S, doesn't matter. In my case, it's COM9, and it will create virtual cat ports based on that data that it's seeing and communicating with the K3S. And Win4K3 Suite has the ability to create up to 6 virtual transceivers. You've got to think of it like a virtual transceiver, and that virtual transceiver can be set up to talk to software, or it can be set up to talk to hardware directly. It's another confusing capability of Win4K3 Suite, and we'll get into that. So for this demonstration, I have 4 virtual K3 ports configured inside Win4K3 Suite. I've got one for N1MM and one for DXLab Commander. A lot of guys should be familiar with both of those programs, both amazing free software. And then all their rage now is FT8, right? Nobody seems to be operating other modes unless you're in a contest or DXing anymore, is FT8, which is kind of cool, yet incredibly boring, but hey, you got to do what you got to do. There's a lot of context to be had there on FT8. So the third cat port I interface with WSJTX. Okay, so those 3 software applications for these virtual ports, 1, 2, and 3, you can see here, the software is clueless. It thinks that it's connected to my K3, all simultaneously. So when I boot up and I run Win4K3 Suite, I can start all 3 applications. I mean, normally I won't do that, but I will for this demo. So I can just fire up those applications. I don't have to worry about reconfiguring anything. They're all configured for these COM0COM virtual ports, the virtual ports 1, 2, and 3. Now port number 4 is a little bit different. It's configured to send a cat feed to a direct serial port that is on the 8-port FTDI box that I talked about earlier. So before we minimize this thing and get to something a little more interesting, let me talk about these virtual ports here. So port 1, 2, and 3 are for software applications, the way I have them configured. Port 4 is to create a virtual K3S cat feed to a physical serial port connection, because I have a physical amplifier that needs to connect to my transceiver. And at the same time, all that software is connected to the transceiver. So that's the beauty of this setup. I can just run N1MM, shut it down. I can run DXLab Commander, shut it down. I can run WJST. You know, I can run all three of them at the same time, which I normally don't do during normal operating, as I mentioned. Now, the magic as far as the software is where guys really get hung up. And that's where the COM0COM null modem pairs come into play. And so to provide a virtual cat feed to different software applications on your desktop here, and the desktop software I should have mentioned is this kind of this reddish orange box here, obviously, and so Win4K3 Suite is in that box. Your software application has to talk to a COM port that your Windows operating system can see. And Win4K3 Suite has to provide a feed to a COM port. So Win4K3 Suite can't be connected to the same COM port as your software, okay? You have to connect Win4K3 Suite to a virtual COM port that is a null modem connection to another virtual COM port that you will connect to with your software application. So in the case of N1MM, you can see that I have it connecting, and we'll show this on the desktop here. I have it connecting to COM20. And so if you look over here, you can see that COM20 is a pair, a null modem pair, against COM30 here in blue, okay, right there. And so if you come over here, we'll see later on that COM30 is what is configured inside Win4K3 Suite. So Win4K3 Suite is pumping a cat feed to COM30, which is a null modem pair to COM20. N1MM is connected to COM20. These are virtual ports. And so as N1MM transmits and receives or pulls against COM20, it virtually is a null modem over to Win4K3 Suite, which appears to N1MM as a physical software, as a connection to my K3. It's as though that application is the only thing connected to my K3. So the same exact thing holds true for port number 2 here, okay? Port number 2 is DXLab Commander, and I'll show you that here too. It is using the COM21 pair, the second pair you see over here in this box, which is assigned to be a null modem pair to COM31. So port 2 in Win4K3 Suite will be assigned to COM31, and for some reason my mouse just rebooted. That was weird. So that will be a pair used by DXLab Commander, and then subsequently COM22 and COM32 are doing the same thing with WJST. Now COM4, which I will show you, is a Win4K3 Suite that is connected to a actual physical DB9 port, COM6, as you can see in the kind of that pink looking color here, that bright pink, which is on the physical 8-port FTDI USB box that I have, that I showed earlier. Now Win4K3 Suite is presenting to that COM port what you would exactly see off the COM port off the back of the K3S. So COM6 in this case is connected to a B26 RF2K QRO amplifier, and I don't want to get too confusing here, but it has a Raspberry Pi into it, or as part of its control, Raspberry Pi inside of the amplifier, and it provides cat control. Okay, you plug in an FTDI USB to serial adapter in the back of the amplifier. So now you think of it like these these COM port pairs here. Now these virtual COM port pairs. So in the amplifier down here, it has a serial port and a null modem cable that right here, I just scrolled up a little bit here. So if you come down here, there's a null modem cable between the amplifier and the COM port that's on my 8-port FTDI box. It's the same concept as these null modem pairs that are software based. Okay, it's the same concept. So, you know, I hate to get too far into the weeds there, but don't be overwhelmed. I'm going to minimize this, and we're going to bring up Win4K3 Suite and try to connect some of those dots here for you. So minimize it out here. I'm actually going to start up Win4K3 Suite on the desktop here. And so as I start this up, the software is starting up right here. And normally I keep this on a separate monitor or out of the way. But this is now connected to my K3S. And if it was the only piece of software connected to my K3S, I could happily operate and do whatever I want to do. I'm going to turn a video here on for the K3S. There we go. And so it's in the upper left-hand corner here. I'm probably just kind of in the way here a little bit. All right. So as I turn the dial here, you can see my finger here. You can see that the K3S or the software is following my K3S when I physically turn the dial, as you would expect. Or I can come in the software and, you know, change the frequency here, and you're going to see it change on the radio simultaneously. You know, I can roll the mouse up and down, and you're going to see the software here change and simultaneously change on the radio. So in this software, you're presented with all the options that are part of the K3. And, you know, I can change bands here. If I want to go to 30 meters, you maybe heard a relay click there, or I can go back to 40 meters. I can go to 20 meters. You get the idea. This is common stuff, you know, everyday stuff that guys in their shack have set up. So in the setup here for Win4K3 Suite, I am connected. I mean, don't let all these options get too confusing, but the only component I'm using that is an Elecraft component here is my K3S. If you remember in the diagram, I'm connected to COM9 at 38.4 kbaud. And so that is connected there, okay? Now, let's spend a little time here in Win4K3 Suite. And this, I assume, would apply to the Yaesu version or the ICOM version too, or other solutions out there that might be similar to the Win4K3 Suite's software. So in the settings, to provide those virtual feeds that I talked about earlier, you open up the settings dialog. Once you're connected to your radio and you know that it's communicating, you open up the settings and you come over here to the third-party software and hardware, and that's key, right? This is providing virtual K3 cat feeds, in my case, to multiple software applications and 2 pieces of hardware. I'll show you 1 piece of hardware mainly, which is one of my amplifiers. And so if you remember in the diagram, the auxiliary cat port 1 I showed in the diagram is set to COM30 here at the same baud rate that I'm going to select inside the software. And I just have a tag here called N1MM. I could type anything in there. That's just for reference. And I'm connected to that port. Now that port has to exist. The COM30 port virtually has to exist in my operating system. So again, if we pull up the device manager here, under the USB ports, you're not going to see those ports, but you actually will see them at the top here under COM0 serial ports. And just to give you an idea, those pairs that you generate with the setup software will show up here. And so let's take a look at that here. Setup G is the application that comes with COM0, and I'm going to run that. And so here I've set up 3 pairs: virtual port pair 0, virtual port pair 1, and virtual port pair 2. and I can't select those ports unless they're first created inside COM0COM. And all these are virtual serial ports visible to software, and it's a null modem cable. You have a virtual COM port on one side and a virtual COM port on the other side. And they can be numbered whatever you want, but you have to keep track of what the pairs are. I like to use 20 and 30, so 20 on one end, 30 on the other, and then for the second pair, 21 and 31, third pair, 22 and 32. I could add more, right? I could add, you know, whatever. They can be numbered whatever I want, but I want to reserve COM1 through COM19 for my other, you know, physical USB to serial port numbers. You know, so I've got 1 through 8, you know, going to that serial port box. So COM0COM, spend some time with it. Don't let it overwhelm you. Once you create these pairs, you can freely delete them and recreate them. You can't goof anything up, and they will persist after you reboot your operating system. So once they're created, you don't have to worry about it anymore. So back to the Win4K3 Suite settings under the third-party software and hardware. Here is my virtual K3S cat feed for N1MM that I'll be using. And I'm using COM30, that side of the virtual pair. For DXLab Commander, you can see here, I'm using the pair that has COM31 on one side of it. And COM32 is what I'm using for WSJT. And so those were those first 3 virtual port pairs that I'll be using. So COM30 is what Win4K3 Suite is connected to. You'll see later on in N1MM, I'm connecting to COM20. Again, 2 pairs matched up. When I show you DXLab, it's the same exact concept. DXLab as software will be connecting to COM21, which is paired up with COM31. COM31 is being used, and Win4K3 Suite is connected to that, just like the first port. Now, port 3, same thing. WSJT will be connecting to COM22, which was paired up with COM32. You can use whatever numbers you want. This is just what made sense to me. Now, port 4 here is an actual physical port, right? COM6. So if I turn on the video I had showing my external physical ports here, again, back there, see if I squeeze in there and show you my lovely wires and blinking lights there, port number 6 is now physically connected to, let me show you this over here, this black serial port for the B26 RF2K guys. This black port here, which is actually one sold by Elecraft, is connected into the back of my amplifier and creates the physical port coming out of that particular amplifier. Most amplifiers have the serial port on the back. The B26 RF kit, the RF2K Plus, requires you to connect an external USB to serial physical connection into the amplifier. You then can buy a null modem adapter, or you can make one. That's what I've done here. I just made one. This cable here physically goes over to my 8-port box, COM6. And so it's the physical same representation, in effect, of those virtual COM0COM pairs, but it's in the physical realm. So hopefully that adds some clarity. This is a null modem COM port pair. One side is my amplifier. The other side is the COM port, USB COM port that's physical. And let me set that down now. Turn the, oh, wow, knocking everything over. And turn the that particular camera off. And we'll come back here to the software. So that port 4, Win4K3 Suite, is connected to COM6, which is then connected to a physical null modem cable, which is then connected to the USB to serial port adapter in the back of that amplifier. Now, I'm not going to get into it, but my port 5 here is doing the same thing to my SPE 2K-FA amplifier. But the 2K-FA has a built-in serial port on the back. So COM1 on my serial 8-port box has a physical serial cable, just a normal straight-through serial cable, I'm pretty sure it's straight through, right to the back of my SPE 2K-FA amplifier. So, Win4K3 Suite is providing 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 virtual cat feeds for my software and hardware, in a nutshell. So, having said that, when I boot up in the morning, right, or afternoon, or at lunch, or whenever, right, the first thing I do when I'm going to get ready to operate is I fire up Win4K3 Suite. I then can simply run whatever application I want to run. So, if I'm just doing, regular DX or just poking around on the bands, I will fire up the DXLab Launcher, which is over here, and I don't have to think about everything or anything because everything's already configured. I can fire up Commander, and you will see that, voila, Commander now is following the radio. I can reach over and physically turn the dial, as you can see here, and DXLab Commander, along with Win4K3 Suite, is following the radio. Or if I want to, change the frequency here, you're going to see it on the radio. You're going to see it on Win4K3 Suite, and everything's great. If I fire up N1MM Plus, and I've just kind of set up the windows here for kind of demo purposes, so I don't have a bunch of windows open. You could hear a beep there. That was N1MM connecting to my WinKeyer. You can see here, and it's a little harder to see in N1MM, but if I switch modes here in N1, you can see it's already connected, right? I didn't have to go in and reconfigure serial ports or anything. So now if I type in a frequency and hit enter, you're going to see everything switch, right? The radio switched, Win4K3 Suite switched to 14 megahertz, and so did Commander. Right? So if I start tuning in Commander, you're going to see the frequency over here in N1MM change. It's up in the menu bar here. You should be able to see that change. And of course, if I had the band map open here on N1MM, let me just pull that up and kind of get it over to where you can see it. Right, as I tune the radio, right, you're going to see the band map moving around here as DXLab Commander is following it, as Win4K3 Suite is following it, right? Everything's following all that stuff. I mean, you get the idea. The software has no clue that it isn't physically connected to a serial port provided directly from the K3S. It's transparent, 100% transparent, and in my experience, 100% reliable with Win4K3 Suite. I have not had any problems. In the past, I've used LP Bridge, which is really designed to be used with a PAN adapter. And I love N8LP stuff, but as far as COM port or cat feed sharing, it just wasn't quite as reliable. I mean, it works, but it's not nowhere near the reliability that I've seen with Win4K3 Suite. So I've shown you two pieces of software that I just fired up. Everything's automatically getting the cat feed. Let's pull up the third one that we talked about, which was WJST, and it is right here. So we'll fire up good old WJST, kind of arrange things so we can see all of them at once. I don't think I have anything covered up here. And WSJTX, WSJT, I keep saying it wrong, I think. WSJT, I maybe even had it in my diagram wrong. WSJT, you can see that it read the cat feed that it's connected to, and so it is also following, whatever I tune the radio to, right? So I'm turning the dial here. You can see up my fat finger up there, turning the dial, and all four pieces of software are following the radio in real time. If I change the software, all the software is going to see that change. They all think that they're connected directly to the port. Again, if I come up to N1MM and I type in 7025 to go to 7 megahertz, you're going to see all the software switch to that frequency, including WSJTX. If I come down to WSJTX and I change bands, I go back to, let's go to 10 megahertz here, see if we can, I always forget which frequency it is. I think it's the, oh yeah, and so, you know, I switched over. You can actually hear my DB18 tuning to 10 megahertz, and that's why you hear some static there. But now you're seeing that all the software followed, and you know, it's going to start decoding the FT8 signals there every 15 seconds. So I'm just going to turn that off to keep that out of the way. All right. So it should be very clear. You can also see that WSJTX kicked my K3S into split mode, so you can see N1M and even notice that. So if I physically go over to the K3, right, and I take it out of split mode, everything's going to change, right? You can see the split removed there. The split now is removed from WSJTX. The split's removed from Commander. Again, typically, you know, if I'm running WSJT, I mean, if I'm running FT8, I'll have Commander going and WSJT. So when I'm using, I'm digressing here a little bit, but if I'm using JT Alert to automatically log the contacts in DXLab DX Keeper, DX Keeper obviously needs to get the frequency details from Commander. So I will run these two applications at the same time out of necessity. I mean, it doesn't matter, right? So hopefully that makes sense. By the way, I could turn on the spectrum scope here for Win4K3 Suite, which is a whole nother video, and I can turn on a UDP feed. I'm totally digressing here. I just turned on a UDP feed that now is fed into the N1MM spectrum display. So for another video, I'm going to shut those off. But that all works seamlessly between all the applications. So let's take a look at the 3 virtual radio ports that I set up. Remember, back here to the settings, tool settings, back to the third-party software and hardware, port 1, 2, and 3, port 1, N1MM, port 2, DXLab Commander, port 3, WSJT. I should change that. I'm a little dyslexic apparently. So if you go to the configuration in N1MM, and see it knows I'm in a CW contest, and so it's complaining there. I just want you to see the frequency there at the top. I switched it into CW mode. So if we go to tools, or excuse me, configure ports, now in N1MM, if you're familiar with N1MM, you'll be very familiar with this. You set up what port your transceiver is on, and as you can see here, I have port COM20, which is a COM0 COM null modem pair, configured as the Elecraft KX3, and it's set up for the baud rate that I had set up in Win4K3 Suite. Okay, and that always stays at COM20. And Win4K3 Suite is talking to the COM30 part of that pair, that null modem pair, those virtual pairs of COM ports. If I go to DXLab Commander config, it's the same exact concept, right? I have my radio is a K3, and on the ports, I have my primary cat serial port set to COM21 here at the baud rate as set up for that other side of the modem pair, COM0 COM pair. And just as N1MM has no clue, it's not connected directly to a K3, neither does DXLab Commander. And the same thing will hold true for WSJTX. Go to the settings in WSJTX, and we go to the radio, and it's the same concept here, COM22. Okay? Back to the settings in Win4K3 Suite. The other side of those virtual COM pairs are COM30, COM20 in N1MM, COM31, COM21 in DXLab Commander, COM22, COM32 in Win4K3 Suite. Okay, you could reverse them. It doesn't matter as long as the pairs are paired up. It could be COM1 and COM2, COM3 and COM4. It makes no difference as long as you get the two pairs matched up and you have that virtual null modem between those two ports, because you have two pieces of software trying to connect to the same port and it can't be done, so hence the null modem concept. And I'm probably belaboring that, but you can fast forward the video, you can repeat the video, and hopefully this will help explain those concepts to a lot of guys out there that are a little cautious about delving in and setting this stuff up. Okay, one thing that I haven't talked about is the connection to the amplifier. And the RF kit guys that are building or anticipating buying and building a B26 RF2K plus LD MOS amplifier are like, okay, NG7M Max, get to the point where you show us connecting to the amplifier. And so how you remote into this particular amplifier, since it's running a Raspberry Pi, and it has a beautiful 7-inch touch screen on the front of it. I have other videos that show that. You can actually use remote control software called VNC, that's Victor Nancy Charlie, to remote in over the LAN to the amplifier. It's connected to my local area network. And so I'm going to fire up that software here, and I'm going to make that nice and big on the screen. And well, actually, I'll make that a little smaller. And as you can see, when I pulled it up, it also should be connected to the cat. It wasn't connected to the cat there. If I restart that, it should be connected again. I must have disconnected that. Anyway, so this is the fourth virtual K3S port that I showed, okay? So right here, where my cursor is, you can see that it's on 10.136 megahertz, as is N1MM, as what you're seeing here on WSJTX, and what you're seeing in the main control software Win4K3 Suite. So now all three software applications and an external hardware device now will follow my K3S. If I reach over and start tuning here, right, you're going to see the frequency over here in my band map and N1MM follow my tuning dial as I physically tune the transceiver. You're going to see the frequency here. Everything is going to be synchronized. Win4K3 Suite, DXLab Commander, yada, 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 and the external device, all transparent. So other solutions out there that allow you to share the cat feeds are sometimes software API specific. So the software you use has to follow software development application interfaces to make it work. The beauty in my mind and why I always recommend Win4K3 Suite in the year 2018 is that it relies on the true virtualized cat feed from the transceiver. So any software that's designed to work with the K3 is going to work. You just connect it to a serial port like it's physically connected to the radio. And any piece of hardware, it's the same thing. This video is droning on here. I could show you how I also control my SDA100 controllers. And I get a cat feed off of that using software called PS Rotator, which also controls my rotor, but it also will control my SDA100s. And a lot of guys don't even know that you can do this. So here, I'll actually show this, and I'm gonna minimize a few things here just to get a few things out of the way. So I also have control going to my SDA100s here. And they only require a read-only feed, so I'm physically grabbing that off the second port on my K3S, but I could just as easily do that with the feed, creating a virtual port in Win4K3 Suite. So It's probably going a little too deep, but that is possible. So I can control my steppers, and they will follow the frequency too. So as you can see here, as I tune the radio, you're seeing the stepper tune along with it on screen, right? I can switch between you know, bidirectional, 180 degrees or normal, and you know, as I click on the screen, it's as though I'm touching the front of my SDA100. Little digression there. Just thought I'd throw that in there to show that that's interesting. So, okay, let's wrap this up by going back to the diagram, guys, and hopefully it'll make a little more sense. So I'm going to just shut down everything. Commander, I mean, I don't need to, but I will just shut things down. And we'll pull up the diagram again. Let me turn off the K3 video up there. And okay, let's wrap this up. K3S, USB to serial, so it's got a USB connection going into my computer. Shows up as COM9. COM9 is connected as the main connection from Win4K3 Suite right here. Okay, Win4K3 Suite then controls the K3. I can remote in with TeamViewer to my computer, or via VNC or a remote desktop connection, and use Win4K3 Suite to control my K3. Cool stuff. There's a lot more capability there that we're not getting into. The main thing we talked about here is I then use the Win4K3 Suite software, and I create virtual ports to allow software on my desktop here to get virtual K3 feeds from Win4K3 Suite. Now, Win4K3 Suite requires virtual COM port pairs to facilitate that. And to do that, we use COM0COM. And it has a graphical setup program that allows you to create these COM port no modem pairs that are virtual, and they show up to the software that's operating, that's running in your operating system on your desktop. Okay, so I have 30, 31, and 32 on one side, 20, 21, and 22 on the other side. The virtual ports inside Win4K3 Suite, one set up for N1M, one set up for DXLab Commander, and one set up for WSJT-WJS. I can't keep it straight. The other side. Okay, Win4K3 Suite is set up for 30, 31, and 32. If we go to the software side, N1M is looking at 20, DXLab is looking at COM21, WSJT is looking at COM22. Okay, I have other hardware controlled by software that we didn't talk about. I have that PS rotator control application that's talking to my rotor, which I didn't show you on COM2. It's talking to my SDA100 on COM3, my SDA100 on COM4. That's the data port on the back of the SDA100s. The other port is getting a read-only feed out of the back of my K3S off of the physical RJ45 to DB9 connector. I could just as easily allow that control to these SDA100s by setting up 2 more virtual ports in Win4K3 Suite. Advanced, okay, getting there. I'm also controlling my QRO antenna tuner, which is a Palstar HF Auto on COM5. It runs a software application that receives UDP broadcasts from DXLab and or N1MM. So for another day. If we look at down here at the physical hardware again, I've got the 8-port physical FTDI chipset COM port device. I highly recommend the FTDI. There are other USB to serial port chipsets that work, but you can't go wrong with a true actual, not a knockoff version, but you pay a little extra and get an actual licensed FTDI chipset. And you can see the hardware devices here. To recap, for the B26RF2K amplifier, guys, on the amplifier, I showed you the physical USB to serial port that's plugged into the back of the amplifier. That creates a COM port that's visible to the software that's running on the Raspberry Pi, which is part of the amplifier. And that software, you select that serial port, which is then connected to a Null modem cable, which is then, in my case, connected to COM6 on my 8-port serial box. The 4th virtual port that's providing a cat feed from my K3S is connected to that COM6. So in my case, my amplifier, my B26 RF2K Plus, thinks it's connected directly to my K3S through that physical COM port 6. Hopefully that makes sense for the B26 RF2K Plus guys. And they really inspired me to make this video, the guys on that forum. But I wanted to make it a little bit generic. Keep in mind, you do not have to have a K3. For that matter, you don't even have to have Win4K3 Suite. I suspect there's other software that are making use of the free COM0Com software, and the concepts would be very, very similar. Hopefully I've demystified a few things here, guys, and I've probably confused a few guys at the same time. Apologies for that. One tip inside YouTube before I go is on your keyboard, if you're watching the video, you can jump backwards 10 seconds by hitting J on your keyboard. Off the top of my head, I'm pretty sure I've got that right. You can Google it if you want to find those keyboard shortcuts. Comes in really handy. You can just back up 10 seconds at a time, or you can jump forward 10 seconds at a time with the L as in Lima. So J, Juliet to go backwards, L, Lima to go forwards. There's other shortcuts that come in really handy if you're using YouTube to learn new things, and it's a great medium to share knowledge and have fun in whatever hobby you have. So I probably forgot something. I hope I didn't. Enjoy, if you'd like, a copy of the block diagram that I built here. Shoot me an email, I'll just do this. I'll probably just put a link in the description of the video to like a PDF of the block diagram, if that help some guys. If you had a hard time seeing it, you could just pull it up on your own computer and study it and try to decipher the setup here. It's not as hard as it looks if you spend some time, and it's a lot of fun to completely automate your station and then focus on your operating and not worrying about what band you're on, if your tuner's on the right band, if yada yada yada. Automate everything, automate your antenna switch and the whole 9 yards. So 73 for now. Give me the thumbs up if you like the video. Please leave constructive comments, and get out there and share the wealth. If you know something about amateur radio, do the same thing I've done. Get on YouTube, make a video, and share your knowledge with some of the other hams out there in the true spirit of amateur radio. NG7M, November Golf 7 Mike, 73, and QRT on this video. Bye, guys.